we've got a very special guest with us, Sarah. And, life brings you to a lot of different places. And I'm very lucky to have met Sarah myself and heard her story. And so we wanted to give her the opportunity to share that story because people have lots of questions in their life, right? And the awesome thing that I'm really looking forward to knowing your story, because I've had the opportunity to hear it before, is I know that the shoes you've been in, the places you've been, are all situations that so diverse that a number of people can find comfort and solutions and a whole broad array of help, wherever their situation is. Just because the last time we spoke, your story is so diverse, and so I'm really looking forward to being able to help you share it with other people. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm excited.
Awesome. So, do you want to start from the beginning, right? Because I know this happened. I know your story started pretty early, right?
Right. So, okay. So from the beginning.
Yeah.
All right.
And
so
tell us about yourself
raised...
too, a little bit.
Okay. Well, I'm Sarah, born and bred in Alaska, raised here, traveled around a little bit throughout the state of Alaska, but also mainly just here in Alaska. My family has been here for, I don't know, I think the earliest was in the 1950s. So we got a pretty good, I guess, area of land here in Soldotna. So we're kind of, we know everybody, small town, that kind of stuff. My parents, were together most of my life. They just recently divorced within the last year. And so I kind of grew up in a home where we went to church and everything was nice there. And then when we got home, it was a little different. It was fighting, all that kind of stuff. And so
there was kind of a face mask on for part of the family. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't put blame, because I think that they were doing the very best that they could. Everybody, you want to look good for others. You want to put on like, I'm okay. You don't need to worry about me kind of thing. But behind closed doors, you're freaking out, Yeah. And I can say the same for my own life. I think that a lot of the times we're raised with something. And so we subconsciously or not, whether we're trying to or not, we bring that into our lives as we get older as well too. So it's always something to learn about how to be real. And
I love that point, because you said you don't want to blame, and that's wonderful, because I think a lot of people, something they experience, I've met a bunch of people, sometimes it's hard not to be mad at your parents. You're like, look at the way you raised me, blah blah blah, you could have done better. But there also has to be a level of understanding where they were coming from, hopefully the place of, seeking to do their best with what they knew and what they had. And so that's an awesome mindset, because a lot of people have a very hard time accepting that and forgiving that,
Right. I mean, it goes with the saying too. The saying is, if you're given less, you're expected less. If you're given more, you're expected more. So everybody's got a story. Everybody comes from somewhere. So, it's going to affect who they are in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that it's okay to be real. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay to, it's okay to even not understand sometimes, and be able to feel that. And, so I just think that's important. And definitely understanding where people come from, and it's meeting people where they're at too,
That's true.
So,
that's very true. Awesome.
Right, yeah. No, something that my parents actually mentioned was like, and they had to accept later on, it's like even raising their children, they had to accept that they were wrong too, and be okay with letting their children know that, like we were
Yeah.
wrong, and and just some of the things they did, and being okay with that, right, and being accepted of that. But of course, like looking to improve and do better, right? Not being, not having that have a victim mindset on themselves, but as a way of growing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's hard to do, that victim mindset, get out of that.
But so, okay, so keep going. So this is the family you grew up in, right? This is what it looked
Right,
like.
right. And I have a brother too, and my brother left when I was about 4 years old. And I can say that was like the first traumatic experience I ever had, even though it had nothing to do with me. I'm 4 years old. Oh, he's leaving because of whatever reason, And so that was like the first man, I would say, that hurt me. And so I kind of held on to that for later years. Trust no one, hurt you before you hurt me, kind of mindset.
Yeah, the lessons you learn
so
from
when I
that.
fast forward, sorry.
The lessons you end up learning from that as a 4-year-old are so extreme.
Yeah, like we were saying earlier, being real and helping to understand is so important, because you never know what your younger child or your sibling or somebody that just looks up to you in general might have questions. And so communicating is a big thing, but thank God that we have our whole lives to learn this kind of stuff. So
that's true.
But yeah, fast forward, I went into high school and found a boy, and I can say he was a boy because we were both children. And we got pregnant, and I had my daughter when I was 16. It was very much in a religious background at that point too. So it was not very a free, I guess, a free household. It was very much, you've sinned, only married people have children, get married,
Right.
and this is my perception. So we got married, and we were
At
not
16?
together, and so it was very, at 16 I got married to him, and we had our baby, and that was the best day of my life, even though I was a child having a child. I don't think it actually hit me that I was really about to be a mother until I held her in my arms, and she cries and she needs you, and all of a sudden you're responsible for another life, and so I think that was I wish I would have caught on a lot sooner to that reality, and I
when
think
do you feel like that hit you? Do you feel like it did at any point, like soon after, or it took a while to sink in? Or
well, I definitely remember when she was born, like an overwhelming sense of love that I don't think you ever experience until you maybe have a baby. I've never felt that love before, and ever since I've never felt that love before. And so I think there was a glimpse of it then. And then like a few weeks later was when I really I'm holding her and I'm nursing her, and I'm watching a movie where, and I can remember this so clearly. We were watching a movie that was like, I think it was called The Changeling, and it's kind of dark, and it was about children, and I just remember in that moment like feeling for this mother in this movie, like I could understand, I could all of a sudden empathize with her, because I get it, like this is my child, and mama bear kind of thing. And so I think that was another moment for me. But because I got into drugs 3 months after she was born, a lot of that bonding and that nurturing and that growing up that you would do was stunted, because I started, you're in a completely different mindset. You're not yourself anymore. And I think that when I got addicted, it was really fast. It wasn't just, oh, I tried this and then I tried this and then, you know, partied for a little while. No, it was very immediate, you know. And
No real experimental phase, or
I mean, I guess like smoking pot before that, and I drank like maybe a couple times, you know, like I didn't like the taste of alcohol. I'd never really been drunk before, but I had smoked pot, you know, and I was interested in other things because I had this, I always I wanted a sense of belonging, you know. We all have that need inside of us to feel validated, loved, a part of.
Yeah.
And so, you know.
Did you feel like you were going after the more of the social aspect of it, where you wanted to, you wanted to be part of a group?
Yeah, I believe so in the beginning, you know. I can't,
Like to
I mean,
fit in,
I can remember I wasn't depressed.
Yeah.
To fit in. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And when did that,
I mean, I imagine
start?
that would, I can't imagine how hard it would be as a woman at that age. I mean, even anybody at that age, to like not feel very different and feel a disconnection, being a 16-year-old mother and married. I mean, you know, I don't know anybody married at 16.
Right.
So yeah.
It was definitely a change.
Yeah.
Definitely a change, and it teaches you to grow up, but you don't, you know, I didn't grow up from
Right.
it. You can't force that, you know. I think that's what I really would stress to people, because there's kind of a I guess there's kind of an assumption that when we're teenagers, because honestly you're kids at that point, you know, and I think that we think we want to grow up so fast, you know. We think, oh, it's going to be so much better, and you know, oh, I love this man, maybe they'll love me if I have this baby, or oh, if we have a baby we're going to be together forever. Oh, if we're married, that's a new alliance, a covenant, you know. And in reality, that's stuff that just doesn't happen the way that you think it does when you're that age, you know.
Right.
And so there was definitely some trying to fit in and sense of belonging. Yeah. So sad. It's sad,
Yeah,
you know.
It's
sad to think about that.
Well, I mean, like you said, you really can't force that kind of change. And I think a lot of times, I think a lot of it is cultural, you know, like you talked about how your family had a very fixed mindset based on their religion. And so that has its influence, and that has its you have to do's and its rules. And so, but I'm curious. So you said about 3 months after you'd had that child, you started getting into heavy drug use. And what was your addiction to?
So mainly addicted to heroin and meth. When I first did drugs, it was cocaine, and then I think I did that for weeks, and then I tried mushrooms, ecstasy. That wasn't really my speed, and then I went to meth, and then like a month late, or meth and heroin in the same night. Got addicted to meth, and my family tried to move me to Portland, Oregon, where I got into heroin, and heroin took over my entire life. That's really where I became a slave to that drug, you know,
the addiction,
and physically, emotionally. Yeah, the addiction took off.
Oh. And so did you move to Oregon with your family, or with your boyfriend, or your husband, I should say, your husband?
Yeah, I was with my husband. We had again, young, thinking, you know, what you're gonna do, you know, and we moved to Portland thinking that just a change of scenery is what's gonna do the trick, because it's the people. In the beginning of a drug addiction, it's always everything else that's wrong. It's not it's not that the addict, it's always, oh, well, if they just weren't around this person, or, oh, if they weren't around this group, oh, if they were in a sunny place, you know, there's all these misconceptions that that's what it is. And that's actually an enabling thing that we do is, you know, we don't want to focus when it's our loved one. We don't want to focus on the fact that, hey, this is a dark thing that they got here. This is an addiction, and this is the person that needs help. We want to make all excuses in the world because we love them, you know.
Yeah.
And that's
we do that to ourselves. I mean, we point the finger before we, you know, direct it in the, you know,
Right.
before we look in the mirror, direct it to ourselves. It's
yeah.
the same principle. Yeah.
Right. So
And
Sarah,
it's a
when
hard
you,
thing to do, no doubt. I mean, it's really hard to look at yourself in the mirror and point a finger at yourself.
so Sarah, when you
Absolutely,
moved
it's
to
painful.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Portland, Oregon, when you moved to Portland, Oregon, were you still 16?
I was. Oh, well, I actually had just turned 17. So this all happened. My daughter was born in February. I got married in June, and by August I was in Portland, Oregon, and it was all
Right.
very, very fast.
Were you
Yeah.
ever able to finish school?
I was not, and so that's something. Yeah, so I got my GED as soon as I got pregnant. I had been taken out of school that year for skipping, and so my parents were like, enough is enough, and they took me out of school. And I got pregnant, and I was rebellious too, you know. I just wanted it my way, and so I didn't do any schoolwork when I was homeschooled, and I found other things to occupy my time because
Oh, so you
I
went
just
to
didn't have. I
homeschooling
guess I
after
just
that?
really didn't have that drive. Yeah, I just went to homeschooling for my sophomore year, which is when I got pregnant that summer, right before I turned 16, and then had my baby and got married. Horrible experience. And then because we both did not want to get married. So even in the marriage, it was very much like no real love, no real connection anymore, you know. And
Yeah. It makes me
and so
think of
even
a lot of things. I mean, it's so I have a couple questions. But the thing it makes me think of is, you know, it sounded like there was a lot of already separation in your own family. You know, you talked about your brother leaving and the way your parents were so strict in some regards. And so, you know, it just seemed like here's the marriage. Hopefully that'll improve. You kind of talked about how you were super excited about that in the beginning. And then it's like, oh, that didn't work. Why didn't that work? And so it's funny how quick we are to try to all people are so guilty of this, honestly. You know, you're like, "Oh, I need to find that connection." And it's like, oh, it didn't work that way. That was not the right step to finding that connection. But my question would be, I think so many people, especially in their teens, find themselves in a place of feeling rebellious. And so what do you feel like drove that for you in your life?
Man, well, I think a lot, you know, some of it, of course, is just, I think, probably hormones, you know, and just the natural kind of way we grow up, you know.
Yeah.
You're a child one day, and the next day you're thinking about your future and hurry up and give me my future kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
But I also think that, you know, just I was sheltered, which now that I'm older, I'm like, thank God, you know, and I wish I would have listened. But at the time, my friends were allowed to do more things, and I really couldn't get away with much. My parents tell a different story, by the way, but I feel like I didn't get away with much. And so I think that had a lot to do with it, is that, and then probably even the turmoil that there was in the home, the underlying tow that there was in the home, which at the time I had no idea, but now I know it was, my father was battling an addiction, and my mom was stuck there alone, alone in that, and trying to raise me. And so I think that we feel that, and that guides how we're gonna, get our assumptions about the world.
When you first said that, you said the turmoil that there was in the home, and I misheard you, and I thought you said that the turmoil that there wasn't a home. And that's interesting because I think so commonly when there is turmoil in the home, the child doesn't even feel like they have a home. And so it's funny how that simple mishearing on my part makes me think of that, because I can think of a lot of people's stories and experiences where, or stories I've heard from other podcasts or whatever, where they've experienced something like that and been like, yeah, I didn't feel like I was safe here, which that's what your home should be. And so
they never had a feeling of belonging. Right. So,
yeah. Well,
yeah, that's
it might be that.
Did that feel that way?
Things.
That there was never any belonging to your family or a place of support?
Sorry, what?
Did that feel that way, that there was never any belonging to your family, or like a safe place for support?
I definitely at times did not feel safe, and it wasn't that I was being abused or anything by my parents, but it was like I was in my room a lot. I felt like I was in my room a lot, and I was trying to block out the yelling, and but it went at the times that it was good, it was really good.
Yeah.
When we were happy, it was really happy. And secrets, man, secrets cause destruction. And that is what it was in the home. It was these secrets and these lies, and
yeah.
And if you're carrying a secret like that, you can't be supportive. You can't keep it a safe place.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think about the work that goes behind that, to keep a secret usually means you need to tell a lie. And I mean, I have heard it told by so many different people that lies just that's it. Like, lies ruin everything. If there's a lie, then there's no truth. And then if there's no truth, well, then where's the light, and where's the trust? And I mean, people can feel that in many cases, but Jordan Peterson talks about how if you want to change the world, then you need to stop lying. And Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who had a very large impact in Russia when they were Soviet, and in changing I believe it was the beliefs behind communism. He said, if you want to take down a tyranny, then you need to stop lying. Like one person who stops lying can take down a tyranny. I think that was his quote. So like that is, I feel like that just does a complete 180. Just the power of lying is so deep and dark, malicious, as Jordan Peterson would say.
It ingrades deep into you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ingrades deep inside of you, and it slowly kills you from the inside out.
Yeah.
My dad's a good testament to that. He had those secrets for all those years, and now, I mean, he's trying to drink himself to death, and that's not the man that I grew up with either. Complete shock, but that was the secrets he held for so long. They get at you. You can't live with those secrets forever. And
that's true.
I mean,
that's true.
Yeah,
they eat you, and they lash out and hurt others. Yeah.
Well, I moved to Portland, and like I said, I got heavily involved into heroin while I was there, and that's where I started IV use, and it's where my marriage started falling apart. Even though it really wasn't a marriage, it was, you could only last so long. I was only there for about 6 months. I did have my daughter with me, and he was using at the time too. And so he got abusive while we were there, and I don't know whether that would be the drugs or whether that's just who he is. You know, but he did get abusive with me, and so I asked my parents to bring me home, and they did. And I'm still 17 at this point. Come back to Alaska, and we decided that we needed a divorce. This was the first time that I had been without my daughter. Was when we were separated. And she was she wasn't even a year old at this point.
So she stayed with him?
I believe she did stay with him. This is the thing with drugs, right? Is you lose track of that. So part of my story is that a lot of the things I maybe don't remember about where my daughter was. And that's a harsh reality that you have to come to terms with.
Yeah.
So I don't remember if she was with me or not when I came back, but I do remember that was the first time that I went without her. And
that just like,
that was a long time.
Yeah.
Did that just like leave a wound where, where you were without her for a while? And you can remember that just like specifically?
I was so sick. The drugs, I wasn't myself, and so I almost want to say that, yeah, it did cause a wound in me, but not a wound that I would be able to feel in the moment. I got to the point where, yeah, exactly. And I think that it was almost like, well, hey, I'm only 17, hey, I'm getting to live a life where I'm getting to be a 17-year-old, and it's the ugly reality of those times. But that I know that now at 29 years old, I know that all that had an effect. And that is a huge reason that my addiction lasted for so long, was because I was without my daughter. And so, but at that time, I don't know that I would have been able to recognize that, but that's interesting that you say that, because I'm definitely going to take a look at that, because that's something that I know I could use some more healing on, so.
Gotcha. I gotta say, I do notice that you seem actually like you have a very healthy perspective on this, and that you're very humble about it. In the way you're talking about the other people in your life, like your parents and your husband at the time. So like, it's very
respectful.
Yeah, exactly. You're respectful for them, and not putting blame on them. And I think that's awesome.
Well, at the end of the day, thank you. I appreciate that. At the end of the day, we all make our own choices, and nobody chose for me to ruin my life. I ruined it very well on my own, and so that's what I remember, is, hey, I did this, because along the way, things change. Like, my mom's the biggest influence. She was the biggest warrior throughout my entire life. And yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I feel like it's interesting how you end up having a parent who's like that in many cases. Because again, relating to myself and relating to people I've heard, I feel like there's almost always at least one parent you look up to, even in a really hard family setting as a child. There's still someone you still almost subconsciously pick favorites. Even though your story seems a little more deliberate with that, but it's interesting. So you moved back to Alaska.
We did. I moved back to Alaska, and you know, my addiction kept the same for many years. I did get a divorce from him, and a custody battle ensued. And, you know, throughout this time, I went to beauty school, and I'm just going to fast forward a few years because it was really just same old, just using. There was really nothing much that happened besides, you know, I was trying to see my daughter as often as possible. And up until she was 2, I had, you know, visitations with her. She would be with me for 3 weeks. She would be with her father for 3 weeks. So that's kind of how it went for until she was 2, and that's when I ended up losing custody. And when I lost custody, it was based off of the addiction. The addiction came out to light. I had to go into rehab for my first time, and I caught a charge. So I caught a misdemeanor at the time and went to jail. And so it was very out in the open by that point. People were very much used to seeing me in that addiction. I was away from family, friends, my daughter. And when I went through a rehab after, go ahead.
Did you have any, I'd be curious to know how you reacted, if you reacted, because I guess that would depend on the state you were in, like, to people. Did you know you were in that light? Did you know, did that motivate any further use, or did that have any impact, or was it kind of still sort of like the separation from your daughter? It was, you know, kind of subconsciously occurring.
So I guess the reaction I had was, once I was in that lifestyle, I was pretty much, let's go hard for the lifestyle. I was still young. I still had these teenager emotions in a drug addict lifestyle.
Yeah.
And so I'm still this child running around trying to be gangster, you know, and so this is where lying came in. Is I started lying about things that I had done because I wanted to. It's such a weird thing when you're in addiction. Okay, everybody's trying to one up each other with how sick of a person you are. You know, like, oh, I've committed this many crimes, I've done this many drugs, I've overdosed this many times, and that's very much the norm in an addiction. You know, when you're in that mindset, until you start seeing yourself as, hey, I'm dying. And so the things that I would lie about at this time eventually started coming true because I spoke them over my life. I was speaking death over my life. And at the end of that 10-year addiction, all those things that I had lied about had come true. And so my reaction at the time was, if you see me as this junkie and this trash and this whatever, it's hot, you know. And then later on, it did fuel my addiction more, because the lie in the pit of your chest when you're going through addiction is that I'm worthless, I'm dirty, I have no purpose, there is no meaning to life. I don't feel love, I don't love, I'm hurt, and so therefore I'm going to hurt you. You know, that's very much the mindset. And so that had to change. And
there's a couple really interesting points you made. The first is the whole one-upping each other as addicts. And I think it just seems like it's a very enabling action. It's like, oh, this is actually okay, like, try to beat me now. Which is interesting because, I mean, we do that to ourselves as humans. You know, we find ways to enable our behavior even when we know it's bad. But the other thing is, you know, you mentioned how you were, oh, I just lost it. You mentioned, right before you mentioned how you sought to hurt other people because you were feeling very wounded. You were also mentioning a number of other feelings that I think a lot of people experience, and you associated it with, in your case, it was associated with your drug use, but I think a lot of people, whether it's the result of drug use, you felt, worthless, you felt dirty, you felt all these other feelings. And I think a lot of people experience those definitely, within drug use, but I think a lot of people also experience those outside of drug use. They feel like they don't have a reason to live, because they don't feel that connection and that love, maybe perhaps in many cases. And so it's just interesting um, because I think that's so common. I think so many people, whether they are users or not, or were users or not, find themselves in a situation like that. And so I just want to put emphasis on that is all.
It is. And, for me, my reason today is God. My reason today is my daughter. My reason today is my family. I find meaning in those things. I find meaning in my job. I find meaning in dreaming again.
That must be, yeah. To actually be conscious must be so, I can't imagine. But that's
so that's
also
the
neat
thing
how you
too.
make that point, is because you, and I love this, I think this is something Tony Robbins mentions, is you choose to associate that message with that subject. You choose to let your family have meaning to you. You choose to let your daughter have meaning to you, because you have the power to associate meaning with what you want meaning to be associated with. And that is something really powerful. If people understood that they had that power, a lot of people don't realize that, but you get to choose what has meaning in your life. You get to associate whatever message you want with whatever is in front of you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And some of us are blessed to have these things already in our life, and we just kind of have to grow up a little bit to be able to realize them. And then some people don't. And I'm very blessed that I had a daughter. I have my mother, I have my father, I have my brother, I have friends that I've had since young, and so I'm very blessed. And there's people out there that don't have all that, and
Yeah,
it's tragic. It's tragic.
that's
So
yeah, and that's the humility portion of it, is to,
we get to choose.
say again.
I said, but it's also important too, is that we do get to choose, like you were saying.
Yeah. Well, it's I really like Daniel mentioned, is that humility portion is everybody has their own story, and some people's stories, when you compare, seems worse than others. But the truth is, we all have a burden on us that is, it's no greater than what we can carry, than what we can bear. And so someone might seem like they have a heavier burden than you or a lesser burden than you, but the truth is, it's the burden, it's their max, it's an inch shy of their max capacity. And so to be able to realize that, here's my burden, it might be really hard, but someone else has a hard burden too, is just, it's such a great mindset to have across the board. I mean, I think that's a life-saving mindset for anybody to have, if there's a lesson someone want to take away, that's a good one.
For sure. I think it's so true, but that gives you belonging in itself.
And power.
And it's just a way of connecting to other people.
Yeah, that's true too. And there's the connection, there's the desire for connection being filled that people crave, in many cases subconsciously, but universally, across the board. Anyway, keep going.
What I gotta say, what's beautiful is that Sarah's connecting. She's, all she's been through, right? She's finding the stuff that has meaning to her life. Like you said, Andrew, she's choosing, but it's the same thing. She's being grateful for, I mean, you could be ungrateful for so many other things, right? But you're focusing on what you're grateful for, and that what you still have.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's something I love about your story is your ability to relate, you know, to the entirety in a good way. It's awesome. Keep going.
Gratitude is definitely, I heard something today and it said lead with gravity, or gravity, lead with gratitude, and being thankful for just being alive, being
Yeah.
thankful. Because when I look back on things, there was, you know, I was saved from so many situations, and all glory be to God. But you know, when I can focus on that, that brings me life. But if I want
Yeah.
to focus on death, that's going to bring me death,
Right.
you know. And so that's a hard one to get over, though, too. You know, you got to really you got to purposefully do that. You got to
Right.
purposefully say, I'm going to choose this instead of that, you know.
But those are
And that's a story
big,
that everybody can relate to.
yeah, for sure. And those are big notes, because that's common. That's like that. I would argue that's one of the more well-known ones, is what you focus on, you aim towards and move towards. But the other one is, I love the lead with gratitude thing. I've never heard it worded that way, but Jordan Peterson talks about how, you know, if you want to live a happier life, then count 5 things you're grateful for every day. And I can say that, you know, me doing that myself, I've seen a good impact. I've seen my mind instantly transform into a better place. I've seen my day transform. I've seen a bad day transform. So that is so key, is just being appreciative of whatever you have around you. I honestly, people are like, I've heard people be like, how do people survive when they're poor or in a bad place? It's like, a lot of times they're just grateful for having anything, and that, I think, takes them the mile.
It's so true. It is. You know, when you're getting clean, like I can just relate that to getting clean. You know, I was grateful for the fact that when I got clean, it was all of a sudden, it was easy. This is something I had dreaded for so long. Fear
Yeah.
of success, fear of failure, fear
Right.
of failure in the success,
Fear
of,
of
you know, all
change.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, big one.
We don't
Yeah.
like
You know,
change.
because you get used to
Right.
something. No,
Comfortable.
no, you
Yeah.
don't. You get
Security.
comfortable in
Familiarity. Yep.
the muck. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. And so that's definitely a huge one, is fear of change.
Yeah. That's relatable. So
Yeah, absolutely.
so so you lost your rights to see your child.
Yes, I lost. I lost physical custody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I lost physical custody, and that happened. That was an 8-year process. And in the midst of that, I can say that that is really where hurt dug deep, was my daughter.
Yeah.
And in addiction, there's a lie being told that, you know, like we were saying earlier, I'm worthless, that so many people relate to. This is not just addiction. This is just in general, people feel that this way, is I'm worthless. I'm not a good mother. I'm not a good daughter. I'm not a good sister. I'm not a good woman, man, whatever, you know. And so I don't deserve her. I don't deserve my daughter. And so this lie ensued, and was planted deep inside my head that I would probably be better off dead. And so with that comes, I'm going to use more, because this is what it's going to get me anyways. I'm going to die in this disease.
Wow.
And there was a point in time where I couldn't talk about my daughter, you know. It was just too painful. And so that's some part of the victory in it now, though, is that you know, I have her now, and I didn't lose her completely, you know, and I got to see her, and I'm getting to build a life with her now. And I think that during my addiction, that was something that I never could have dreamed of. you know,
Yeah.
became very bitter. And, you know, so, but I can say that when I went through rehabs, I went through a bunch of rehabs, and one thing that people used to tell me back then was, get clean now, because when your daughter's young, she won't remember this stuff. She, you know, you'll be able to build back better with her when she's young like this. And so that set into my mind that, oh, I have all this time because she's only 2 at this point. Well, fast forward 8 years later, here she is, she's 10, you know, and I went through 3 years of not seeing her, and for like an extended amount of time. And then I went through 1 year of not talking to her, and that's because of that pain, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we, sorry, I'm just kind of gathering my thoughts here.
You're talking about how they told you, you know, change this area of your life while she's young, so that you can actually, you know, connect with her while she's young, and it won't be difficult in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be curious,
Yeah,
what do you think about that? Did you agree with them? Do you agree with them now that you're in a sober state? Looking back, do you agree with them, or what do you think about what they had to say advice wise?
that's a good question. I think I could agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also, I'm grateful that she was not with me in my addiction. Like, I'm grateful that she, you know, for such a time as it was when she was 2, you know, she got taken away from me. I went through my addiction, and she barely had to see any of it. You know, there was times where she was with me and she saw it. And there was trauma that I will have to face when she's ready to talk about it, you know. And I always tell her, I'll always be here if you want to talk, if you want to tell me you're angry, whatever, you know, I'm here. I try to instill that with her. But at the same time, I wish that there would have never even have been that, you know, where you don't have to even go through it in the first place, you know.
Right.
Because I think,
imagine
even at a young age, go ahead.
I imagine that separation definitely is hard, to say the least. And that if that's tough, because I mean, the fact that you were separated, it felt like in the time you felt more of the wound because you lost your daughter and she was too young to understand at that point. Although, you know, I'm sure there was still an impact, but yeah, I mean, I would have to agree. I can't even imagine the blessing it is now for you to look back and know that at least she didn't have to experience that firsthand, even though she did have to experience something of a hardship there. It could have been so much worse, and that probably feels like such a blessing, because firsthand experience probably, if I had to guess, would have been a lot worse.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hear it all the time. You see it all the time. Children in OCS, you know, and there is a blessing in not having your child in something like that. Because what is instilled into us when we're young, we carry until we're adults, and we carry it until we learn to heal from it.
For sure.
And that takes courage to do that healing, you know.
That's
and not
true,
only
yeah.
You don't always know where to start either. And so yeah, I'm grateful. And in another sense, I think that it also harmed my thought process of hearing, hey, get it together while she's young, because it gave me an excuse to go on longer.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, you know, you can't get clean for anybody else but yourself. You have to get clean. Just like with anything, though, with anything in the world, you know, if you want to lose weight, you got to lose weight for yourself.
Right.
If you want to be nicer to kinder to people, you got to be kinder to yourself. You know,
Right.
you got to everything and anything in life. That's how it is. And so
That's true. The
Great lesson right
externals,
there.
the externals affect us, but ultimately the love starts within.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
Dan, what were you saying?
Hmm.
No,
I
no
don't
stress.
remember.
Let us know when it comes back to you. Something else you pointed out was a life rule I've heard that is so phenomenal. It's, compare yourself to who you were yesterday instead of to someone else. And there was a couple moments in you sharing your story where it sounded like you were comparing yourself to other people, and so you were really beating down on yourself, which was making the problem so much worse. And it's interesting to see that, because if you had looked at yesterday, who knows difference. But it just makes me think of that life rule, of how much more harm we do to ourselves when we do compare ourselves to other people, rather than looking at us in the past and seeing how we have improved or how we could improve.
yeah, absolutely. That was something even in that sense, because if we are comparing ourselves to, I'm just going to take my experience. I'm looking at myself back then. In the moment, I'm looking at myself, all these wrong things I've done, and it just fuels me to continue in that way, because, if I'm so terrible, I'm just going to continue, because I got to numb out. I got to fill this void with something, and this is my vice. And so I'm going to take this and I'm going to fill it, and it's making it worse.
Yeah.
Worse
It continues
and worse
to
and worse
compound.
until it's and yeah.
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 And
for
something
sure.
something else
And,
is, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Something else that's interesting is the externals that play such a role in that, because here's your mindset, and then you have all these people validating that mindset without knowing it. Your parents are sitting here going, this is who you're not, this is who you're not. Your friends are saying things or doing things or excluding you or pushing you away because of something, and all it does is enforce it, because all it does is force you to continue to compare yourself to the judgments they're making, which is very, very hard, and you have to be in a very conscious state to disconnect yourself from other people's judgments. And so when other people, especially people you love or you're close to, make those judgments, all they do is actually enable you to further compare yourself to other people and worsen, that situation, because they're not helping you to compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Instead, they're letting you compare yourself to other people, which is not effective.
Absolutely. And I see people have that. That wasn't my experience. My family, my mom and my dad were always very they were trying to remind me who I was. It was definitely something inside of me that was telling me that I'm this person. It wasn't necessarily anybody around me. It was me that was sick. It was me that was my worst enemy. And yeah. So, kind of fast forwarding, when I was, or in about 2015, I moved to, or no, it was like 2013, I moved to Arizona, and I was there till 2018. In that time, I experienced, homelessness. And I want to make it clear, the reason I'm not mentioning my daughter a lot is because she wasn't really around. Yeah. And so that's why that is the way that it is. But,
Right.
I experienced homelessness. I experienced prostitution. I experienced jails, prisons, psychiatric wards, and more rehabs, and so it's very much the story of every addict out there, right? I think the beauty in the story is the redemption in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And really what that took was those experiences.
Yeah.
I kind of had to be humble.
I'm curious, how many times did you, if you don't mind sharing, how many times did you go to rehab, and how did you feel about that? Do you feel like it was effective, rehab in the United States? Did it have a positive
That's a good
influence?
idea. So what I can say is you can't force anybody to do anything in life. Okay. That person has to be ready. And so rehab is very great for somebody who is ready.
Yeah.
And it's good for the tools. So I went through 14 rehabs. They say that the average, last I checked, the average was about seven inpatient stays at a rehab until an addict stays clean. I don't know that statistic today. What I can say is that in the beginning, when I first started going, I was learning. I wasn't able to grasp onto everything because your mind's kind of mushy when you first get clean. And so you can only retain so much. But I learned some things like gratitude. I learned what my addiction was about. I learned that there was these chemicals going on in my brain that was making me need this more, and I learned that I was numbing out. I learned that that as it gets, as you keep, okay, so this is something they taught me too, is so like you're there, think of it as a tiger inside of you. You got this sleeping baby tiger when you first use drugs inside of you. You continue to use for 3 years, that baby tiger turns into a 3-year-old tiger. Well, then you get clean for 4 years. That tiger inside of you is still growing. So now you go out and relapse, and this tiger is huge now. It's a full-grown lion. Or, wow, turn from a tiger to a lion. No, it's a full-grown tiger now, And so now it's got all the rage in it. It's got all the claws and all the fangs and this, animalistic tendencies. And so you just awoke that tiger because it was sleeping and growing, and now you just awoke it, and then it's worse. And I can truly say that is true.
Yeah.
You, every time you realize it's a little bit worse, you're digging that hole a little deeper.
So,
but
I understand
go
you,
ahead.
You're saying it always exists. You just have to be careful not to poke the bear.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
You learn what you can handle and what you cannot handle. Like I know that I can't be around people that are toxic anymore.
Yeah.
I can't be around condemnation anymore. I can't be around manipulation, and if I'm around those, it's gonna start poking where it needs to until it awakens. And here I am again at a low point, so
Sarah,
yeah.
the rehabs, they gave you a lot of tools essentially to help with your addiction. And then I want to ask that, I mean, I know you're still going with this. I know you're still going with the story, but like, was the turning point at one of your rehabs where, was it more of a mindset change while you were using the tools that they were giving you?
In the end, it wasn't the rehabs. It wasn't it wasn't any of that. And that's what surprised me in the end. In the end, I was suicidal. In the end, I wanted to die. I was at a turning point of rehabs aren't working, jail's not working, psychiatric wards aren't working. I either want to die because I can't live like this no more, or I need to get clean. And that, and I had a spiritual experience in my mom's backyard, and that's actually where my turning point was.
So you ended up you moved back to Alaska then?
I did after, yeah. In 2018, I moved back to Alaska.
And if you don't mind, I think the first time you shared this with me, you also said you experienced kidnapping, right?
Yes. So yeah, it was in Arizona. That was, yes. So when I was in Arizona, this was when I was homeless on the streets, and me and my second husband went to Mexico, and we were there trying to get more drugs, and we went with a friend of ours, and we traveled through the border, and then we were coming up out of the border again back into California. And we got to the border line. We were in my car, homeless, but I had a car. And I got pulled over by the Mexican police, so the policia, and they almost picked me out of the lineup of all the cars that were lined up. We were still in Mexico, so it wasn't technically U.S. Customs. And they pulled me over, and they had us get out of the car. At this point, I don't remember any drugs in the car. You know, when you're in that lifestyle, you're not really trying to save anything. You're just trying to use as you go kind of thing. So I don't remember anything like that. But I do remember getting out of the car and the policeman, or the Mexican police, searching me. And they searched the car, and when they first searched the car, there was nothing. And then they go back, they handcuff me, and they go back to the car, and then they pull out a syringe that had like a tiny bit of drugs in it. And at this point, they handcuffed me, my husband, and this friend we had with us, and they put me in a separate car. And they put my husband at the time and the friend in a car behind us. And they left my car, or no, one policeman it was me inside my car with the other policeman. That's right. And we drove, and I'm crying because you know, you hear stories all the time. Oh, you get arrested in Mexico, they either want money out of you, or you know, you're lost. And so I'm terrified, and I'm crying, and he says, don't, this officer tells me, don't cry, you're going to be okay. And I said, where are you taking me? And he said, the police station. Well, 20 minutes later, we end up in the middle of nowhere, further into Mexico, at an abandoned shack. And like the windows were broken out, and they pull us out of the vehicle. And on the way to this shack, this officer had put his hand down my pants, saying he was trying to check for drugs. And so when I had to get out of the car, I believe this is the story, this story, but that you were mentioning. But when I had to get out of the car, I had to zip up my pants. He had unhandcuffed me. I zipped up my pants. And when I did that, my husband and his friend like turned around, almost as if like they knew what was going on.
Yeah.
And they told us that we had an hour or so to get so and so amount of money, and that I needed to call whoever. They walked us into town, and I called my mom, and I think that by the grace of God, because who I was with two men, that they didn't take me further.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah.
And when I called my mom, when I called my mom, she had the ring around with the officials, U.S. Customs, and I'm standing in the middle of and this is what's crazy, is I was standing in the middle of this Mexican town that's very much a border town. It's very much where tourists are. Americans are all around. Mexicans are all around. They're selling their blankets and their shoes and all this kind of stuff that they've made, beautiful stuff. And I'm sitting there with this police officer, and I see my mom walk across the border with, I don't even know how many officers. And she said, that's my daughter. That's my daughter. And I just ran to her. And that was like one of the first real experiences I had. That happened, and then a few months after that, another like an actual kidnapping happened, and I'm wondering if that's what you were talking about, actually.
I just remember you'd mentioned, I could have sworn you'd mentioned being kidnapped at one point, and um, you don't have to go into all the details, but your life experience with your story is just, it's so diverse that, like, and that's one of the beautiful things about your story, is even though it's very dark and horrific, is, I mean, there's like nobody who probably couldn't relate to this in some way, because it's so diverse. And that's the beautiful thing about it, is the its diversity makes it so easy for other people to connect and relate and find truth or healing or help through it. And that's why I wanted to get that bit in too.
Okay.
But thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that. That's
Oh,
wild. And then
absolutely.
that was you mentioned the impact that your mother coming to get you had. And I think you were,
Was she coming
before
from
I asked that,
Alaska?
you were about to go into, the whole where everything the turning point.
Did she come from Alaska all the way out there?
No, my parents had moved to Arizona. I moved to Arizona I think like 6 months before they did. And then they ended up moving down there because my grandparents were down there. And so they had bought a house, and they were residing in Arizona. So that's why I called them, was because they were right across the border, basically. Yeah. And so, yeah, that is part of the turning point. That's where things got really bad, and they just consistently got worse and worse. And at the end of when I think back on some of these things, I feel like I can tell these stories, right? I can tell you what happened to me. I can tell you my experience. I can tell you all these things, but when I look back on it, it almost seems like it's not real. Just because of where my life is today, And so, redemption's a really beautiful thing, and it's freely given for everybody.
And it's very real.
Yeah.
That's something else that, I mean, if you could say that louder for the people in the back, and scream it from the rooftops, redemption is real. It is 100%. You always can find forgiveness, even if it's from yourself, even if you're the one forgiving, it exists.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, do you mind going into detail on the whole turning point? You moved back to Alaska in about 2018, and
so in 2018, me and my mom decided to move back to Alaska. My mom and dad's relationship was taking a turn. I had been clean for 8 months at this time. Like I said, and towards the end of my addiction, I started getting extremely hopeless, and suicide was at the forefront of my mind a lot of the time. And so 8 months was a long time. It was the longest time I had ever been clean at that point. And when we moved back to Alaska, I had.
How did you achieve that 8 months? What caused you to, was it because of your suicide or your, the desire for that you just dropped it and started to clean up, or what motivated that?
Well, what motivated that? Just the will to live became greater than the will to die.
Right. Well, it's kind of like was it kind of like it's kind of like the last straw for you? It was like, either I turn around or this is it.
Yeah, it was very much a reality that I knew that if I kept going, I was going to die. And that's still true to this day. If I were to return, I'll no longer be on this earth. There's just, there is no question to that, that was my turning point. I mean, I had traumatic things that go on, but in the end, and people could do things all day to me, but in the end, when it was me that was wanting to end my own life, that was the change.
Mhm.
And thank God, you know, because the one person has all the power to do so. I didn't do it, you know, I tried, you know. So what really motivated that, I mean, and I had a group of people down in Arizona. I was attending AA meetings and Alcoholics Anonymous, in case people don't know what that is. But and that's just a program for addicts, alcoholics, all the alike. And but anyways, I had a small group of old people. I mean, my youngest friend was 64, my oldest was 97, you know, and those were the people I clung to like glue, like my life depended on it, because it did. And they gave me knowledge, they gave me wisdom, and they just loved me. They loved me back to life. And it was so special. And I'll forever be so grateful to them, because they were really what helped start my journey towards life, you know. And so it was a sad day when we decided to leave, but at the same time, my daughter was here in Alaska, and when I was clean, that was my number one goal, was to get back with my kid and live my life with her. And so
Gotcha.
when we did decide to move up here, it was like, you know, things are going to be different this time.
Right.
And it wasn't necessarily the case. I mean, I did relapse, but I can say that period of sobriety that I did have, that 8 months, started to uncloud the thoughts, and I started getting instilled into me, like, that I was important, that I was lovable, that I have a light to bring to people, you know, and that I'm just as important as the next person. And you know, and that's what got me going later on.
Well,
And
I imagine that, well, one, it showed you could do it, probably, and two, it probably showed you the light again, you know, big time. You were like, oh, this is all a reality, you know, it can exist for me.
yeah,
But
it did.
that's amazing. It seems like, you know, it seems like you really, and I guess I would imagine this probably varies for everybody, but it seems like you really hit rock bottom and you were like, yes, it's all or nothing. It's up or it's done. And so you just sought to transform yourself. And that's amazing.
What was that? You said you had an
Yeah,
experience
that was
at your turning point,
definitely,
like in your mother's, you said your mother's backyard. What
yeah,
was that
spiritual
experience like?
experience.
Yeah.
I had a spiritual experience, and I believe in God. And I was raised knowing who he was, and so that's my story. And when I was in, I like I'd said, you know, like I will say over and over again, probably, is, you know, I was suicidal, and so there's just no, I wasn't dreaming anymore. I wasn't seeing a future. You know, it was just very dark. And I had relapsed after like 2 weeks of being clean, and I was in my mom's backyard, and I don't know what came over me, but it was a spirit. And I all of a sudden had a a heavy weight on my shoulder, and I was crying, wailing in the backyard, heaving over to the floor or to the ground and back. And my mom comes out, and I couldn't really speak. And she just started praying. And I started hearing, and when she first started praying, it intensified. I started hearing like shrieks, shrills, screams from like the corners of the yard, and it was terrifying, you know. And she had called her friend over, and they started praying for me, and they prayed hard. And I felt this presence grabbing onto me, holding onto me. And like I said, as they were praying, they were, I believe they were, you know, I had to start believing in what they were praying for too. You know, I'd known God. And so I think that once I started saying, you know, no, this is not gonna come over me, this is not gonna take me, you know, that's when it broke. And when that presence broke, I'm telling you, the pressure, the atmosphere, the screams I was hearing, it all went away. It disappeared immediately.
Wow.
And I became exhausted. And I needed to go to sleep at that point, you know, because I was drained from whatever that was. And I believe today that was a spirit of torment. I believe that was the spirit of addiction. And I believe full-heartedly that that's why rehabs and all these things did not work, was because it wasn't necessarily that this addiction was taking over, but it was the spirit that was attached onto me that I had called into myself years before. And and I'm telling you what, that after that experience in that backyard, I had a dream, and I had a dream that the number 10 was very relevant in this dream, and my daughter was with me, which at this point, like I said, I was not with her for 8 years. I didn't really know who she was. When I was with her, she felt like my little sister or something. She didn't feel like my own child. And I had this dream where something about 10 and school, and it was a very happy feeling. And I didn't understand it at that time, because I was thinking, oh, well, maybe I'm going to have 10 years. When she's 10, I'll get my life together. But and fast forward to now, I was in addiction for 10 years. And right now I am preparing to buy a house for me and my daughter. So that was God telling me his promises back then, you know, and that was after that I had this deliverance.
Wow.
And every time after that, when addiction started trying to come back in, it was nowhere near as hard to say, you know, enough is enough as it had been in the past, because that spirit had been lifted off of me. And once God works, you can't say no.
Right.
If God says it is, it is. And so
There's so many things that come to mind with what you just shared. I mean, the first one is, I love that your mother's first instinct was to pray. That's amazing. What a great
And then
first
tell one of
reaction
her
to
friends to
anything
come
in life.
too.
Yeah, that's
And have some
funny.
enjoy it.
That's just funny, and phenomenal. And yeah, I mean, wow. The you know, I guess technically it was maybe arguably your first real separation, and the first step is always the hardest. And so yeah, that's crazy. And I love your outlook on it, you know, your firm belief in what occurred. And it's amazing, because I think one of the faults of our society is we are so caught up in the materialistic side of the world that everything has to be physical, but it's not. The weight of mental and spiritual aspects of your life can be tenfold of anything physical, if not greater. And so
absolutely,
that is such a misinterpreted, unknown, or downplayed aspect. I mean, you know, your spiritual health and your mental health are major impacts in your life. And just like we talked about earlier, you know, everything intertwines, everything desires to be united, and that includes all areas of your health, you know, your body, your mind, soul. Geez, what are they called? You got to take care of, there's 4 aspects. You got to take care of your spiritual, physical, mental, and there's another aspect. But the thing is, they're all intertwined. Yeah, emotional. It might have been emotional, but they're all intertwined is the point, you know, and that's the truth, is you can't forget one of them, because they all influence each other. So, I mean,
Right, they're like the legs on a stool. You lose one leg, the stool collapses.
Yep. Yeah. Wow.
But
there's a saying that they
quit
say in the
fighting.
recovery community, and it's we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Hmm.
And that's so true. You know, it is so true. Because we have spirit inside of us as well.
Well, I mean, this is a whole nother topic, but the idea that humans aren't divine is very recent. I mean, all throughout the history of the existence of mankind, humans have believed in divinity and spirituality, and it's only very recent that people have come to believe, or to believe that that doesn't exist. And it's very silly to think that, to be honest. But wow, that's phenomenal. Did you finish, or did you have any final parts that you wanted to add?
The only thing I could really end off with is just, that for all those years that I had tried getting clean over and over and over again, and I had, like I said, the fear of success and the fear of failure were both hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a fear that when I was going to get clean, it was going to be extremely hard and difficult, and it was going to take forever to undo all those burned bridges.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was not my experience. And in the
awesome.
end, it was very easy, and so I think that when we play up how bad it's going to be, because we're so used to it being that bad, we can't give ourselves the benefit of the doubt that saying, hey, it's probably not going to be what we think it is. It's probably going to be better than our wildest dreams. And that is what my experience.
Yeah. One, it's something Daniel always tells me, you have to write a good story for yourself for it to come into play. You have to sell yourself on a good story. And the other thing is, what was the other thing? Man, my thoughts just come and go. Yeah, the idea that, if I do change all this, it's still going to be a world of tragedy. It's like, that's us enabling ourselves to continue staying stuck. And it's just so funny. Good. It's just our mind tricking us. It's just another trap.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You really have to sell yourself on a news story that anything's going to be better than where I am. I can do it. I got to do it. And things are going to be better. Great.
Sarah, I have a question about, after that spiritual experience you had, was that the beginning point for you to go the 8 months straight without relapsing, or was that after the 8 months?
That was the beginning point. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So that really, wow. Yeah. And then, what do you do now to, keep yourself from going back to where you were?
Man, it feels like I don't even have to do anything. Like it feels like I just am living, it feels like that was a completely different person. And I have pictures to prove that I was that person. I have, memories, but the life I have today is so much better than I could have ever imagined, and
Wow.
I mean, I get to see my kid all the time now, and
right.
I'm about to get 50-50 custody back, and I have a career. I have a dog,
An amazing dog.
A dog alive.
I can
yeah.
And that's great, because there's so many messages to take, but the whole, I feel, you said, I feel like I'm just alive, it's like the past becomes the past. It really does. The past is called the past. It's nothing more than in the past. It's gone. It moved on. That's why it's called the past. It's done, and you talk about how it almost feels like it was a dream or didn't even exist, and that's like, you can move on from that. Absolutely. It's awesome.
You can move on from anything. I mean, everybody has their hurts, habits, and hang-ups,
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
And there's always something different. There always is. There, you look up any person's story, there's going to be trials and triumphs, So I'm sure you guys have amazing stories as well. You know, we all have that experience. Some, you know, it's sometimes hard to see.
Right. Well, who also, how those stories come together is, you know, usually from somebody else. Like you mentioned your mother, you know, and I don't know, was there anybody else that played a big part in your story?
You know, I think my baby girl did too, because the joy that I saw in her eyes, you know, it didn't matter what I looked like. I could be 98 pounds and have, you know, scabs on my face, and it was still like, mommy, like that love, the glimpse, the whatever gleam in the eyes, you know, that kept me going, you know.
I
That
think
kept me.
there's someone who
Wow,
says that there's no stronger connection than that between a mother and child. I'd believe that. Personally, I would definitely believe that. That's
Right.
awesome.
Well,
Your heart is forever outside
unconditional
of your
love right
chest.
there. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
How, if you don't mind us asking, how long have you been sober now? Like how successful is this success?
2.5 years.
That's freaking
So,
awesome. Congrats. That's
yeah,
so awesome.
yeah,
And
it's
then,
crazy because
and how old's your daughter now?
13. She just turned 13. So pray for me.
Oh boy, the teenager
No,
years.
she's great. Yeah, she's great. She's just, you know, she reminds me of myself. So, but she's awesome. She's so smart. I mean, she's in high honors and stuff like that, you know, so she's amazing.
Wow.
That's awesome. I love how how you perceived the future was way different than you thought it would be.
Oh God.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, guys, I should, like, where I'm at right now, it should have taken me 10 years to do. I mean, I undid my life 10 years worth, and my life is better than it was before in less than 2.5 years, you know, because it's been pretty good for a while now, you know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. And if I can make it through that, man, I can make it through whatever, you know.
That's the
I'm just
beautiful thing.
grateful that I have these kinds of problems these days, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's the beautiful thing about success in general, but especially big successes is you're like, I know how to deal with this, or I've been through worse, you know, and you just brush stuff off. Yeah.
Yeah. Gratitude, man.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah. Always.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the amazing thing about your story is there's so many lessons to take from it, and like I mentioned in the beginning, one of the reasons why I really love your story is because there isn't just so many lessons to take from it. There's so many things, so many ways. It's almost impossible for a person not to relate to your story. You know, I mean, you were kidnapped, you were an addict, you were a drug addict, you had a child, you had a teen pregnancy, you were married as a teen, you've gone through a divorce. I mean, like literally countless things. You've been suicidal, you've been to a low point. Like whatever hardship someone's going through, that's one of the huge beauties of your story. Because that's the beauty of suffering, is being able to find the joy in suffering. That's when it becomes nothing more than a sacrifice that you're willing to make. But that's the beauty in your story is it's so easy for someone to find meaning in it, and find meaning in it that can benefit themselves for their own growth and their own success, or you know, wherever they're at in life. So phenomenal.
It's beautiful, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And you know, the other funny thing is, everything's a cycle in life, and I just can't help but chuckle how I noticed that in a lot of things. And here, you know, you started in Alaska, you're back in Alaska, and you're back at an even better place. You know, a fresh starting point. Just like, you know, when this all started, you were just you as a human being before everything happened, and now you're at the same place as if life were new. And so it's awesome to see that.
Yeah, it's pretty cool to be able to be back in my hometown where it all started, and I'm rewriting something even better than what
Like
I
it
had
never
left it
even
off
happened.
as.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you have
That's
any final questions, Daniel, or thoughts you wanted to share?
No, I just appreciate you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
You know, you have such a positive, you just got high-fived me through the screen right here. You got such a positive attitude, which is phenomenal. And that's great.
Yeah. Sarah, did you have anything else you wanted to share with anybody?
Just at the end of this, I would just like to say that all glory be to God, because that's the only way I got through anything. So never can forget King of Kings. But I wanted to, just thank you guys for allowing me to share my story with you guys. And I hope that people listen to it. I hope that they can get something out of it, whether it just be a glimmer of hope, because that's what you need.
Yeah.
You know.
Sometimes that's all it takes is a sliver.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with Daniel. Thank you so much for sharing this. I mean, I've already heard it once, but hearing it again, it's almost like I didn't even hear it the first time. It's so much, like, there's just it's such an experience to hear it. And I am so grateful that you joined us today to share that. For everybody out there, there really isn't a lesson you can't learn from this somewhere, but you know, take what you need to learn from it, because what a crazy story of, like you said, Sarah, redemption, because it does exist. You know, you really can go and do a complete 180 and go from the absolute bottom to the absolute top. And so it is so beautiful. Thank you for joining us. Phenomenal to have had you on. What a great experience. And like always, everybody, peace.